Welcome to the Kelly Cardenas podcast, where attitude is everything. This man in the studio right now didn't know that he was being recorded, didn't know that he was going to be on the podcast today, but I had to grab a hold of him, sit him down, put him in the chair, because this man is probably one of the wisest men. He's in my men's group, and I just got a chance to be able to speak life into him. What I was saying is not only his strength, his power in what he does, but also in his vulnerability in who he is, makes him the star that he is. If you're on and you're watching right now on YouTube, you know this face. He's the weapons expert on Pawn Stars, been recorded on over 50 episodes of one of my favorite shows in the world, Pawn Stars, but also he's a historian. This man is, I tell you, he's a jack of all trades, but he's very humble about it. The first time that we met, he didn't tell me about those things. He was just asking me questions about who I was. That's why I wanted to have him on the show, and I just think he's doing some incredible things. So please welcome Mr. Craig Gottlieb to the show.
I'm so excited and surprised to be here. I got to tell you something. You said that to me this morning, and my instant reaction was there's power and there's vulnerability, and that rarely comes hand in hand, but it's because it's not my power. It's God's power. I'll be vulnerable because I really realize as a human being who I really am, which it ain't much. Especially when you compare me to like God or a lot of other people who I respect. So it's like the power you see, it's God's power. The vulnerability comes from me being honest with who I am as a human being.
Well, where did the vulnerability come from? Because it's like you'll talk to us about, you'll be like, hey, I'm angry, and in our men's group, and I don't let a lot of people into our men's group as far as telling the details of it. It's our time, and right. I tell you, it is. Am I correct on this, Craig? It is one of the coolest men's groups.
I'm super bummed if Tuesday comes around and everybody's busy and we don't have it. Literally, I'm like, what am I going to do now? What am I going to do now?
Why are men's groups so important? And for the guys out there that are listening that aren't in a men's group, get in one. Create one. But Craig, why is it so important to be in a men's group?
Couple reasons. Number one is that, Proverbs, I think it's chapter 24, some verse says that, a bunch of counselors, and I'm really paraphrasing here, plants thrive with many counselors. And again, not an exact quote, but that's so important because very rarely in this world are we cultivated to have friendships where we can be vulnerable, and in a small group that's covered by the Lord, that's the first thing. Second thing is the different kind of people. We've got like Chandler. He's 27 years old and he's so wise, and you've got, there's just a different people with different life experiences. And it just so happens that what they've got to say on a weekly basis fits into exactly what I need and what the Lord wants me to hear. So it's just like a magic moment. And I'll tell you, when more than 2 or 3 people are gathered, there's a protection, okay? There's like a cloud, because there's Satan's out there. He's real. And that cloud is protecting us, and just so much magic happens.
So this is the thing. I think a lot of times when you speak about God or you speak about the Lord, people get the woo-woo stuff. And almost a lot of times they'll shut off because they're like, well, because some of the things that they've heard, like if I choose God, then I can't be successful in my business because I just got to be poor and I got to be broke and I just got to be off the side. You have shown me a whole different side of life because, in the secular side or just in the world's eyes, you're a super crazy successful guy. You're in the limelight. You have been in the limelight for a long time, and you still are able to put God first. This was a big thing for me because I think a lot of times people think you have to choose either or. How have you been able to bridge the gap between the two?
Well, it's not like I'm putting God first. God is first. Okay, and that's like the foundation. It's like, I'm not putting him anywhere. God's where he's going to be, right? And it's like, here's the thing. When I started, I did not set out to be a TV personality. It's the last thing I was thinking. And I sort of accidentally found my way on world television. And a couple weird things happened. Like after my second episode, I'm in Finland of all places, in the middle of the country, and I'm holding the door open for this delivery guy, and he just goes, he looks at me. And this is my first, and I didn't even watch Pawn Stars. It's the first time I go, wait a minute, I'm like on something where people know me. The guy stares at me, goes, you are from the Pawn Stars. And I'm like, how did you know that, And so I came face to face that I had an opportunity. And again, God's first in my life. I don't put him first. In fact, you know what? A lot of times they put him second or last, and then I pay the price, right? But it's like I realized that when people stopped me, for example, I had a chance to be humble to them and to invest a tiny moment in their lives. Like, hey, I've seen you on Pawn Stars, it's great. Can I get a photo? Whatever I'm doing, I'll stop and say, it would be my honor. Here, let me take it, you know? And so it's just a quick stop, and it's a way to touch in with people that you'd never touch in with. So that's a long way of getting around to the short answer, which is that God is first in my life. And because of that, I get the chance to be humble and authentic and to touch base with people that I never would get the chance to do.
So one of the things that stood out to me, Craig, was it was the first time that you came to men's group, right? And you pulled me aside. Actually, it was the first time, and you left, and you said thank you so much, and then you came back to men's group on Tuesdays. If you're in Carlsbad or you're in the area, Tuesdays 7:30 transformational time. It's amazing. Everyone's welcome. Everybody's welcome. But on the second time that you came, you gave me one of those sideways compliments. And I don't know if anybody out there listening, Wayne Freeman, you know, you're listening. I want to thank you so much for riding with us forever and ever and ever. Tony Torres too. But I get sideways compliments all the time. Like, oh, I love that for you. I would never wear it, but you. And Craig gave me this sideways compliment. He was like,
wait. How's about this one? You must be very proud of that.
Yeah. So you gave me a sideways compliment. You were like, hey, I wasn't coming back today. Mm-hmm. I was coming to tell you that I'm not coming.
I remember that.
Can you tell us about that story?
It's literally, I repeat it so often, Kelly. So I was in another small group, and I've been in one for, it's about the same one for 10 years. And it's on a Wednesday morning. And so our friend Adrian, fellow Marine, invited me to come to this small group. And he invited me to he invited me to go he invited me to go paintballing with his son and my son. I show up, and he goes, do you have room for the piñata? I'm like, what piñata? He goes, oh, this is a birthday party. There's 22 kids coming. I'm like, well, that's great. Thanks for telling me. Yes, it's the same thing. He invites me to this small group, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I can come to your small group for the day. Well, what he didn't tell me was this is basically like the first meeting of the small group, and it's a new one. And sort of like the idea was everybody who's there is going to stay there. And I'm like, oh, do I have Tuesday mornings? I don't think I do. And, I talked to my wife about it, and she's like, Craig, I'll support you in what you're going to do, but just keep in mind, now you're committing a Tuesday and a Wednesday morning. Make sure that that's what God wants you to do. And I'm like, okay. So I did a whole plan about how I was going to tell Kelly that thank you very much for the opportunity. I know I was here the first week, and now the second week has nothing to do with you or anybody else, okay? It's just it doesn't fit with my schedule. I'm really honored that you asked me here. I'm sure it's going to be a great small group. And so I had this whole plan, and I thought it out, and there's a whole past track of thoughts leading to what I was going to say. And then sitting halfway through it, I hear this thing. It's not actually a voice. Craig, you're staying. I'm like, okay, and in my mind, and there was no prior thought to it. It was just like, Craig, you're staying. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to stay. And the reason I knew it was from God is because I had no plans to say this. I didn't think it through. There was not a big line of thoughts behind it. And so afterward, I come up to Kelly, you got a minute? And he's like, yeah. And I go, so Kelly, I was about to I was about to tell you the truth about why I'm not coming back. But just so you know, while I was here, God spoke to me. I'm staying. I'm taking a hiatus from my other small group. And he's like, great. But that's just like, you talk about putting God first. And again, I don't always do that. A lot of times, and that's when I fail miserably in life, when I'm not putting God first. I'm not allowing, and I said earlier, I'm not putting God first. God is first. But he's a gentleman, as a friend of mine says. He'll allow me to turn my back on him. And then he sort of allows me to experience what happens when, he's not first. And when I am thinking and praying and I'm in the Word, things like that will happen. And they happen regularly. And so for that, I'm thankful.
So talk to us too, because being a Marine, thank you for your service. Being in the Marine Corps, this is one of the most structured guys I've ever met in my life. Like in the event, if you get to meet Craig, which you will if you're around me, as a good friend of mine, super structured. Amazing at execution. God doesn't ever execute in a straight line. Talk to us about that and how you've had to adapt in your life, because when you have the type of personality that you do, a lot of times we could get into the methods as opposed to the magic that God brings.
Well, you talk about the execution and what you just perceived as me. That is, what did you call it? That is my adaptation, because guess what? That's not really who I am. I'm the most disorganized, like squirrel, person you'll ever meet. When my wife first met me, she says, when you look at Craig, he looks like he's got it all together. He's like, his pants are creased perfectly. You could she said you could cut a cantaloupe on his pants. I'm like, I've never heard that before, but I don't think anybody's ever said that. But yeah, but she goes, once you get to know him, you look behind him and there's like a trail of his stuff that's just like, literally. One of my stepkids says, if you just follow Craig, you're going to pick up money because he just drops it out of his pocket. So all that being said, I have to have that system. And yet I'm about to say why I don't. But what you see is me, like not on my best behavior, but me when I've got my crap together. But I'm here to tell you that, in the Marine Corps, they say no plan survives first contact, which means you can have all the plans in the world, be as organized as you want. And then 3 o'clock in the afternoon is going to come around, your wife's got a headache, you're tired, and you sit on the couch all day and you watch a whole season of 30 Rock. And that's okay, but I guess, what was the question?
Well, I mean,
see, that's exactly it.
Well, it's like this. Talk to us about the difference between your plans and God's plans. Like, you didn't set out, when you were a kid, it wasn't like you said, hey, I'm going to be on Pawn Stars and be the weapons expert on Pawn Stars. Take us through that and how these things happen, because what I want the listeners to understand, and I want to, number one, I want to tell you all how much I appreciate you. Helping us to get in the top 1% globally, guys, has been phenomenal. I mean, it has been, and it's been all because of you guys listening. The Tony Torreses, the Wayne Freemans of the world, every single person out there that's been riding with us from the beginning. But help us to understand, because there's always our plan, right? And Mike Tyson said it best. He said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And then who they are comes out.
That's what I said. No plan survives first contact.
Yes.
And what that means is no plan survives first contact with the enemy. Okay, and the enemy can be many things in our lives. It can be overscheduling. It can be people who really don't like you. It can be a lot of things. I mean, fill in the blank. We've all got our enemies. And we wake up in the morning with the best of intentions. And by the end of the day, you're like, wait, what happened? This day is over, and this is not how I planned it to go. And you're right. God doesn't, we know God doesn't think, and I didn't even know what that means, linearly. But we live life linearly. And you said earlier that systems are important, but they're not the important thing, And I think realizing that you are not a big deal and that it's not all about you. I think that's it. It's not all about you. If you can think of everything in your life that way, it has an impact.
I think one of the things that inspires me about you, well, there's so many different things, Craig, but one of the things is that you found something that you were really passionate about that, honestly, like me growing up, if you would have said, like, you could have a career as a weapons expert,
It's like,
I mean, I would have told you, what are you talking about? Well, like a weapons expert.
It's like in college. You don't go to the college fair and they're like, weapons expert. Oh, I'll do that. No, they don't have that, Well, it's like, I'm going to quote Rush Limbaugh. Rush Limbaugh says, do what you like and success will follow. And success may not mean tons of money. Success might not mean tons of fame, okay? But success will follow. And that's a biblical principle. And I think that's the way I did that. It's like I was passionate about my contact with history and telling stories. One of my greatest passions is connecting people who don't normally think about history with history, because history is super important for lots of reasons I can go into. And if I can do that, and I can do it with artifacts. And so when I connect someone with an artifact that attaches them and makes them experience a person, a place, a thing in history, that really lights me up. And so that's what I did. And that's what I did for a living after I got out of the Marine Corps. I bought and sold artifacts. And so that was my pursuit. Connecting people. Yeah, I needed to feed my family and make money, but there was lots of ways to do that. And believe me, it's not like a pathway to vast untold riches to do what I do.
But tell us about the first one, because you said I started buying and selling artifacts.
Well,
I'm just thinking of you going to a garage sale and finding like a shotgun and then selling it.
Think of me as a 9-year-old.
Okay.
It's literally that early. My dad was a World War II veteran, and he gave me a bayonet, a rusty bayonet worth literally nothing that he brought back from World War II. And now, granted, this is like the 70s, so this is an appropriate gift for a kid. Nowadays, maybe not so much, but
you can't give it. Is that the number one gift?
Yeah,
is that the number one gift?
Yeah, and I can tell you other stories that would be completely inappropriate today, but that lit me up because I actually got into history, and everybody around me growing up in Miami, Florida, which is where I grew up, was a World War II veteran. You throw a stone, you hit a World War II veteran. And so this stuff was readily available for next to nothing. And there was really no known value for this stuff. And but eventually there came out, and so I was collecting stuff from a 9-year-old, you know. I got like different things from different neighbors. One of my neighbors gave me his Purple Heart, for crying out loud. I mean,
he gave you a Purple Heart?
Gave me a Purple Heart.
Okay, what sidebar here? Give me the context. Is he like, are you guys playing football and he reaches in his pocket and is like, you caught the ball, let me hand you this Purple Heart? Well, how does he give you the Purple Heart?
Being passionate about history is like a disease, and this guy was a World War II veteran. He was I think a tail gunner in a B-17 or in the Marine Corps. I'm not sure what air platform it was, but he was like my hero, and I would literally go over and sit in his den while he got drunk every afternoon, and I would just be with him because his den had so many cool things in it, and he had like some medals lined up, and a little correction, it wasn't his Purple Heart, although he had one, it was his dad's Purple Heart.
What?
And it had his dad's name on the back, okay?
And he just gave it to you?
Gave it to me. Bill, no, that's not Bill Lyons. It's Howard Jenks. I'll never forget him. Another thing, Bill Lyons, another one of my neighbors, had a German dagger, and he knew I had my dad's bayonet, and he never gave it to me. But I was allowed to like go over and play with it, which is cool,
How old are you? Hold on.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's this drunk dude who gives you a Purple Heart and has you play with knives at the side. Please don't, if you're a parent out there, this is not the way you raise your children.
Don't do this at home.
So Craig has a book too that's how to parent your children. I'm just joking with you. So that's incredible.
But like he didn't give it to me, and funny enough, there's a connection. He also was an alcoholic, but when he passed away, his daughter knew that I had loved this thing, and she said, I'm sure Bill and my dad would like you to have this, and gave it to me. And by then I was a collector. Okay, and so fast forward a little bit. I'm buying and selling things that I have acquired just so that I can afford to buy other things that are for sale that I don't have money for. And so buying and selling was a thing I did ever since a kid, and junior high, high school, college, even Marine Corps. And so fast forward, after I got off active duty, I said, well, I need an actual job, and I'm already making money doing this enough. I already have a reputation. I already have knowledge. So this is what I'm going to do. I mean, my degree was in philosophy. So I literally, there's no jobs for philosophers, which is part of the reason I joined the Marine Corps. And then, obviously, military antique dealer. And the other thing too, my dad had a business partner who was a gun collector. And again, this was safe. Don't try this at home. But he would lock me into the gun room at his office, and would put white gloves on and play with guns. And I would come out. And again, there's no ammunition. It's safe, and these are all antiques, by the way. Of course. And I would come in, Mr. Redford, what is this? And he would stop and answer every one of my questions.
Wow.
He was not drinking, but he did do a lot of napping on the couch. And so, so I just naturally picked stuff up, and so I wanted to do what I loved, and it was fun. And I also and I didn't know at the time that by doing this I would be connecting people to history. For reasons that, again, I find important. But it ended up being that thing which kept me going. Because, you can't get up in the morning and do something you hate and not pay a price.
Wow.
And had I picked something that I hated, I wouldn't be doing this still. I'd be doing something else.
So, Craig, tell me, this is the controversial thing. And you actually, you had told me about this a while back. And you were like, I want you to ask me this question. So I'm going to ask you this question.
Why am I so handsome?
Yes, that was the first one.
I said I'm a model. I'm a before model.
Why are you so handsome, and why did you hang out with dudes who were drinking who gave you knives and guns when you were a child?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Why did you have a guy lock you in a room with a bunch of guns? I'm just joking with you. Yeah. But on the website, like right when people get on the website, they're going to see certain things. And sometimes when a person sees a thing, don't judge a book by its cover, right?
Yep.
And a lot of times a person can see that and say, oh, wow, and then they have a question or they have a preconceived notion on it. But knowing who you are, I want to bridge this. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Of course.
So can you talk to us about this and make sure that you're as close to that mic as possible, because everyone like you have the stories that you have are so rich and amazing. But let's hit that one right on, and then we're going to go into a couple other things.
It's the elephant in the room. And like, what I mean is, when you Google my name, Hitler comes up. I mean, who has that as like an aspiration in life, right?
No one.
And the reason is because, I told you I was connected with World War II veterans, and World War II veterans brought back a lot of Nazi stuff. And, what's cooler when you're a kid than like an old Nazi helmet, and you don't really get it as a kid that, well, a swastika is like, it's offensive, and if you've got a swastika at home, or you're selling things with swastikas on them, and I do a lot of that, you have to talk about it. You have to be prepared to give an answer when people ask you, why are you doing this? You're like profiting off of evil. But no, for me, the years like I'll call it World War I to World War II, in Germany in particular, you see the very best and the very worst of human nature. And as a Christian, how humans walk this world is of intense interest to me. And what I mean about the best and the worst, you see, well, you know what the worst is, but you see the best. You see heroism. You see, you guys know, I don't have to say it. And for me, connecting myself or others to this period exposes them to the same question that I often ask myself. And this comes back to the Nazis. How could, Germans, who were pretty civilized people, be made to do very bad things, some of the worst things in history that we have access to, before they were really individually very bad people? In other words, it was like a sliding slope. These butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers, these young people did not grow up to join the Nazi Party and work in a concentration camp and kill people, to shoot people, mothers and kids in a forest. It's just beyond my ability to comprehend. So that is of intense interest to me, and it's not because of it's not the dark part, but it is the dark part. It's like you look at that and you go, how can this happen? And it brings you face to face with humanity and its failures, and really what it means to be human, because that's just a very emotionally charged moment, those periods, and we need to look at them because people say human beings change and evolve, and I'm here to tell you they don't. We're the same people that we were in 1930. And there's a thing. C.S. Lewis said this: we don't not burn witches because burning people is wrong. We don't not burn witches because we don't believe in witches. It's the same thing, And so that's like sort of an answer to that question, And there's a real reason behind. You talked about this, I make money buying and selling things, and a lot of those things are Nazi items. And by the way, none of my customers, I've had like one or two people in my life, I'm like, I'm not going to do business with you again. You're weird. These are doctors, lawyers, salespeople, business executives, teachers, and they're interested for the same reason I'm interested. And so that's it.
So, Craig, help me to understand. I've heard this saying over and over again, but it's become more powerful being around you, that if we don't understand history, then we're in jeopardy of repeating it. I'm paraphrasing. Yeah. Why is history so important, not only to the next generation, but why is this so important? Let's go in two parts. Number one, why is this so important to you? Number two, why is it so important that we understand our history and the things that have gone on?
Because we're human beings, and it goes back to what I said. We're the same people we were in the 19th century, in the 18th century. Just technology has changed. Our issues have changed, but our hearts have not. And for most people, history is like this black and white, dusty, two-dimensional place that you read about in history books. Yes, it makes an impact, but by like holding an artifact in your hand, it makes history present tense, three-dimensional, and it does connect you. And if you don't believe me, let me put something cool in your hands. And again, this is sort of a hip pocket appearance, so I have nothing. But you put something historic in someone's hands, it's like a little time machine. It transforms them and brings them face to face with all the issues and all of the themes and the stuff I just talked about that a history book just doesn't. But why is history important? Santayana is the guy who said, if you don't learn from history, you're condemned to repeat it. Well, think of the opposite. A lot of evil people in the world, a lot of dictators and they try their best to disconnect the youth from history, because history has lessons that we can learn. And it sounds like I'm trying to win a Miss America pageant, but I'm not. And if you disconnect someone from history and make them ignorant of our past, you can tell them any lie you want, and they'll probably believe it. That's why history is important.
Wow.
Yeah. Just look at today. Look at the news today, okay? Talk about Vladimir Putin. What is he doing right now, you know? He's doing the same thing that Hitler did, using the same reasons and the same justifications. What's next? I don't know. I hope, hopefully not World War III, but the questions need to be asked. You know, and if you look at a lot of political, I'm not going to get into politics, but if you look at a lot of political debates today, same thing. A lot of the sides will want to disconnect you from the history, because a lot of these same issues are not new. Nothing's really new in the world, okay? The technology's changed, but nothing much is new. And so that's why history is important.
So what do you say to the younger generation that says to you, you just don't understand when you say that we don't change? Yes, I've changed. We're not the same. You know, the people used to walk around and use maps, or they used to walk around.
What's a map?
All these things. Like, they used to do that. You're just a boomer. You don't understand. You don't understand us today. And you said that we haven't changed. Like, and really, I mean, as human beings, our desires haven't changed. Everyone wants to feel important. They want to feel loved. They want to feel lifted up. These desires never change. But what do you say to that young kid? Because you've got a little one in Reese.
Yeah.
Like, how were you able to connect the dots that way and make history cool?
Well, the first thing you got to do is listen to people. And when my son tells me you don't understand or you're being a doofus, I got to listen to him, because maybe I am being a doofus, or maybe I don't understand. And there's certain things I don't get, and yet I feel that as a parent, it is important for me to redirect him back to first principles. And, as you said earlier, or maybe I said it, he's dealing with the same things in his heart that I dealt with and that my dad dealt with all the way back. And so first you got to listen. You got to listen to anybody. And guess what? Remember I talked about no plan surviving first contact? My wife will tell me sometimes I'm a terrible listener. And I know that's true. But I want to be a good listener, and it's because I know how important it is to listen and to just observe. And people have their finger on the transmit button too much. Really important. If you know about radio communications, you can't listen when you're transmitting. There's certain transmissions that can be both ways, but you got to take your finger off the transmit button to hear and listen. And by hearing and listening, you get information, and then you can be best equipped to talk to my son, as you said, for example, or to talk to someone who's struggling with something, or to speak about a political issue. I rarely post on Facebook, but the other day I put up a funny picture. I was struck by the fact that it was 66 years between the time that the Wright brothers took their first flight and we landed someone on the moon. 66 years. Blows my mind, okay? So here we are. I'm connecting myself to history. So I put a picture of each one up. I found the Wright brothers plane, and I found the lunar landing, and I put it on Facebook, and I said, 66 years, huh? Question mark. And I get 300 or 400 people, oh, that's great and stuff. But I got one guy goes, we never landed on the moon. And I'm like, well, I know, and I didn't say anything, because immediately they started going in on this guy and going, you're a moron, you must be a Trump believer, and or you're this guy or that guy. And and my comment is, I said, hey guys, let's not criticize someone for having a minority opinion. Most people believe we landed on the moon. I think we really did. But the civility is gone in our world, and that's become okay, and it's not okay. The Bible says it's not okay. And that, I think, is a root beginning to a lot of worser things that we can do. If you talk poorly to someone, the next thing you know, you're going to treat them badly. And if you treat them badly, and you don't listen, the next thing you know, I'm not saying it's Holocaust, but it's just wrong at the beginning. Okay, so whether or not it leads to something, you nip it in the bud. And so again, back to history. Why is history important? Case in point. I'm thinking about it, but my whole little Facebook thing,
So help us to understand, because a lot of times a popular opinion at one point is accepted, right, by the masses. Mm-hmm. And then you have a minority opinion that everyone says that they're crazy. And then that paradigm switches. Talk to us about a specific in your life that through history, you actually understood where you used to think, hey, this was the popular opinion, this is what it was. And I'll give you an example. So, I mean, it's just a quick example of, when the explorers thought that the world was flat. And everyone, they were convinced, the popular opinion, if you said the world was round, you were absolutely nuts, crazy, off your rocker. Now that paradigm is switched.
Yeah.
Tell me about one of those things specifically in your life that, because of the research of history, you actually adopted the minority opinion.
Okay, here's one for you. But funny enough, you remember spontaneous generation? You know what that is?
No.
For like 200 years, people thought that if you left meat out, worms would spontaneously generate out of the meat and turn into flies. And now we know today that's not what happens. But it took like 200 years. I mean, the best scientists in the world was like, yep, spontaneous generation. That's how it works. Or ether. They thought ether was, and by the way, you show me a science textbook that's old, it's like half wrong. It's really weird. Science is a wonderful way to think, but it's true. All the old science textbooks, they're full of mistakes. And spontaneous generation, or and that's history, or ether. Everybody thought that ether was like some substance that everything transmitted through. Well, how about this? Growing up, let's talk about this one. I'm going to come clean here. Evolution, okay? Random mutation, natural selection, Darwin. I grew up being told that was science. And right now, what I'm about to tell you is a minority opinion, but it's changing. Now, I'm a believer in intelligent design. I believe that as a science mind, if I look at the biological, the archaeological, all of the science-based evidences as you observe the world, the conclusion I draw from looking at that is that the best possible explanation, looking at microbiology, okay, looking at the cell and DNA and literally how mathematically impossible it is when you stop to think about it. Don't worry about religion, don't worry about God, just mathematically, is this possible given the length of the universe, which is, for most people, believing, 14 billion years, can this happen? The answer is it's very unlikely, okay? And so that leads me to an inference that there was a creator. Now, I happen to be a Christian, okay, but it's not the reason I'm a believer in intelligent design. So that's an example, and to reach that conclusion, you got to go back and look at Darwin and what he talked about. He thought the cell was like an amorphous blob of jelly, okay, and there was nothing in it. And so historically, it makes sense that he would look at the world, that he would look at the shape of beaks of finches on, the Galapagos Island and say, well, look, it stands to reason, and we know this is true, that beak size changes as a result of environment, that you can grow sheep with longer fur if you naturally select to only breed the long-furred sheep. And then he drew that conclusion, but he didn't know about the cell. Okay, it was like it's Darwin's Black Box. There's a great book about it. And so that's an example. But knowing the history of Darwin and what he thought and actually reading Origin of the Species helped me to have that view that I have, which is that science and observation leads me to the belief that there's an intelligent designer. I'm not saying who he is. I mean, I know who I believe he is, but I'm not going to draw a conclusion of who he is. There's a lot of biologists who think it could be an alien, but there's an intelligent designer. And so that's my that's my example of history and leading me to have a minority opinion. And like spontaneous generation, more and more scientists who are authentic and honest with themselves are starting to reach that conclusion. It's the dirty little secret in the scientific community. Your podcast will literally start lighting up with this freak who's sitting here denying evolution, which everybody knows is true, And then again, historically, you look at, and this is where history informs my belief about this. You look at propaganda, and that's propaganda. The Nazis didn't invent it. That actually the Catholics invented it. But the Nazis really perfected propaganda. And there's a lot of propaganda behind evolutionary theory. Neo-Darwinism, they call it. So anyway, enough of me being a denier or whatever you want to call it. But you asked a question. That's the answer.
Absolutely. Well, and I love it because I love the fact of a lot of times, a popular opinion, 5 years from now is just like your fashion. you put something on and you think I'm it. I have the greatest look of all time. You look back at pictures of you in high school and you're like, why was I wearing that tuxedo with tails?
Mullet,
you know
really?
what I'm saying? Yeah.
Does the mullet really look good on you? A bell bottom? Are you kidding me? How about a members only jacket?
Yes. Actually, my daughter wants to wear them now, which is crazy.
I just bought a members only jacket.
So good.
Denise made fun of me, but it's in my closet. I
love
haven't worn it yet. I love it.
You love it. So, Craig, when we're talking about history, let's talk about the history of Craig. Okay. So, you growing up, we already understood that you were raised by knife wielding, gun locking in the
drunk
closet.
neighbors.
Yeah. But talk to us too about. Let's go to the history of Pawn Stars, right? Because I think a lot of times people think, oh, Craig came out the womb and he was destined for Pawn Stars. But I find that it's these little tiny breaks and these little, I say to people all the time, I've said it to you before, that there's 3 components to life, right? Be kind, make a ton of friends, and stay really curious. If you do those things, magic happens. Talk to us about the little breaks, because one of my buddies told me, he said, there's no big breaks in life, just a bunch of little ones that make up to a big one. And another friend of mine, his name is Eric Compton. And Eric, I called him, and he had a business that profited in the first 2 weeks. And I was like, whoa, that's so crazy. You got the golden touch. He said, no, Kelly, I just keep touching. And talk to us about those little breaks and how that happened. Because it didn't just poof, I'm on Pawn Stars 50 episodes. How did it start, and then where did it go?
Yeah, a couple things. First of all, Pawn Stars is not how I define who I am as a human being. It's the most popular of the things I've done. So I just wanted to get that out there.
Absolutely.
I've done other TV shows that have 1/50th of the audience that I actually am more proud of. But to your point, and we'll talk about this another time, but to your point, we are a work in progress. And it comes back, you talk about putting God first. You don't get saved and then all of a sudden you're like a perfect human being, okay? We're usually here for most of our lives building ourselves up, changing ourselves to be better human beings. And so that reality applies to pretty much anything. So if you're in a project and you're doing business, it's occasional that someone wins the lottery, and that is a life-changing momentary. Oh my gosh, now what am I going to do? I can do everything I want to do. But that doesn't happen for most people, and it is baby steps. You don't go from, okay, here's the funny one. You want to do push-ups? You want to do good at push-ups? Well, do more push-ups. That's how you get better at push-ups. And you don't do it like a day, next week, okay, I should be doing 100 push-ups. No. You got to be consistent. And you're going to fail. I'm going to fail. I'm going to say I'm going to be consistent. I'm going to have all these, apps designed to help me be consistent and build better habits, but they're just baby steps, It's like, I want to be a kinder person. Well, that's easy to say, but, really only God can make me a kinder person with a kinder heart, but I can be kind. And if you get up in the morning and go, this is just a small thing, but today I'm going to be kind to everybody I meet. I'm going to literally be intentional about, and I might screw everything else up, but, how about this one? I said this the other day. I'm going to be upbuilding. I'm going to build everybody up just for today. So I made sure that everybody I met, I said something not only just nice to them, but like, praised them. Even somebody who's being mean to me, there's something good about everybody, and you want to point that out. Oh, encourage. That was my word. Word of the day. I'm going to encourage, and that's it. And today I'm probably not being very encouraging, but these are baby steps. And so, in my life, back to my career, to talk about it, sort of like cheapens the moment a little bit. But like, I wasn't looking to be on TV. Now, it would be every business person's dream to get what is effectively over $1 million a year, or sometimes like a month. I mean, how much would it cost for you to buy a 30-second commercial on the History Channel? Why would we get 10, 15 minutes a week? So with reruns, 30. I mean, so everybody, I didn't even know what Pawn Stars was. I mean, I knew what it was, but there was, in its heyday when I was on all the time, I couldn't walk through the airport without getting stopped like 5 times. And again, there's that opportunity to be humble and to invest in someone's lives. But, oh gosh, I lost my train of thought. So organized. But, baby steps. I didn't start off to be on television, despite the fact that would be the pursuit of every business person. I want a TV show. I want a super podcast. I want, all this thing. I want millions of eyeballs, because if I get millions of eyeballs, I'll get thousands of customers. Well, I went to do a charity event because I had a thing going on, and I was invited to support a charity event. And while I was there, I met a really powerful guy named Sandy. And I don't think he minds me saying who he was, Sandy Kleiman, wonderful friend. He was a producer up in Hollywood. And I took the time, he won an auction or a raffle for a gun. And that's what I was there. I donated a firearm to fundraise for this project. And it was he bought it for his son, so his son could shoot it. And so the next thing we did is we went out and shot the gun. And I really liked his kids. They were really nice young men and promising. And whether it was because I liked his sons no, Sandy is a really great dynamic person. And he says, "You've got a story to tell. I want you to be on TV." And I'm like, I'd never been on TV before. And so he literally opened a bunch of doors in Hollywood for me where I was getting like representation from like big time powerful entertainment attorneys. I walked right into like the #1 talent agency and they got a guy begging to sign me up. He only met me for 20 minutes. It was because Sandy saw something in me that no one else saw and never could have opened those doors on my own. Guess what? None of that came to anything, but I was in Sandy's office one day because he wanted me to meet publicists. And he wasn't even there. And one of his assistants was sitting there with me, and I was meeting a publicist. And there were publicists interviewing to be like, I'm like, wait, who's going to pay for this? But one of the publicists basically just heard what I had to say and then went home and did a little research and said, hey, I know that there's a need on History Channel for, a weapons expert. I'm glossing over a lot of the details. Okay, so it went from me just volunteering to do a charity event to getting noticed by this guy, another small little success, to investing in his sons, because I thought they were cool, to following this man's lead to get on Pawn Stars. And then I was there for my first shoot, and during a break, they're like, well, we got some other gun to shoot with, but can you do it? I'm like, of course I can do it. And they're like, well, don't you need to research? I'm like, well, not in this case. I know this next gun. And then after that second one, they're like, do you want a job? I'm like, okay. So that's that little baby steps thing. Yeah. And I wasn't looking to be on television. I wasn't looking for success in the military business, but I got it. I mean, like supercharged. Go back to that multi-millions of dollars a year in free advertising. You just can't. That is like instant. Only an idiot could not like profit off of that. You know what I mean? You really have to be stupid to screw that up. So that's the answer. It's a long answer, but baby steps are important because that's the way we were designed to be built and to be improved. It's like you don't go from like you don't come out of the womb an 18-year-old. You can't even talk. You can't even like feed yourself. And so there's a lot of growing to do. In fact, I'm still growing. I know I'll be growing until the day I'm done. We're still a work in progress. So.
Well, I think what's so amazing about it too is you talk about your what was your friend's name?
Which one? Sandy.
Sandy.
Yeah.
You talk about Sandy, but you're Sandy to so many other people. And, we've had many talks after men's group, and you've just let me know about, different people that you were trying to connect with different things to be able to open up opportunities. Overarching thing that I've heard from you and that I see in your life is that if you seek joy, then then the profit comes. But if you seek the profit, then it'll never add up to the joy. Right?
Absolutely.
And I see this in you. We've talked about it over and over again, and you've been a great example and you've given me a huge amount of wisdom in it. Talk to these two words, oil and water.
Oh, yeah. You talk about oil and water all the time. I've got a gift for you that I'm not going to tell you about now, but it's like a physical reminder of that. You say, and this is Kelly, you try to mix oil and water, it's impossible. You can shake it up for 20 minutes, and you can get it all like, so what is it? Salad dressing. It's going to separate. You can't mix it. And I want you to tell me what oil and water means because you're going to do a better job at it than me, but then I'm going to comment. So welcome to my podcast, Kelly. Tell me about oil and water.
Well, my dad would always tell me this. For those of you listening, you know who Pops was and, who Pops is. And what he would say is that you can't mix God and the world. And if you try and do this, you can, like Craig was saying, you can shake it up, you can make it look pretty, but at some point it's going to separate, and God won't have anything to do with the world, and the world can't have anything to do with God, and you got to choose. And this was a tough one for me, and that's why I lean on Craig a lot, and you've given me a lot of wisdom in it, and you've encouraged me, given me a lot of encouraging words. And that's where, and helping me to realize that if you focus, like you were talking about earlier, if you focus on the right things for the right reasons, then the right things turn out. But if you focus on the wrong thing, even if it's for the right reason, the right thing won't turn out, right?
And
help me with this.
And there's the follow on that is you say, you focus on the right things are going to turn out, but not necessarily by your definition. Super important. It's like, okay, I'm just going to focus on the right things now so that I can be worth $10 million. And no, stop. Just forget about it. Or everybody think in your mind right now of like your number one business goal or your personal goal. Okay. And then go, okay, well, I'm just going to focus on the right things. I'm going to get all, Kelly Zen here and think about the right things and blah, blah, blah. So I can have $10 million. No, you do that. It's exactly the opposite. You really do have to separate yourself from the target, from the end goal.
And so all of them have to be in line, right? Because what you're saying is if you focus on the right things, right?
Yes.
But you do them for the wrong reason, you could get into a challenge. And what I love what you're saying too, Craig, is that not always the right thing, the thing that's right for you is not always the thing that you want.
Absolutely.
Right? And you've helped me with this wisdom, and you've encouraged so much where it's like, you've almost let me know, and I don't know if you realize this, but you'll tell me a lot of times, like, just back off, relax into it, and let God have it. Can you explain to the audience? Because I understand when you tell me that, I'm like, okay, cool, I got you, Craig. But a lot of people out there are like, but Craig, I got a mortgage. But Craig, I got, I got to take care of my kids. You're just telling me to relax and to trust God and let him do this stuff. I mean, come on, don't he need a lot of help? He's kind of busy.
If you think I'm going to unpack that and tell you exactly how that works, I'm going to disappoint you. I cannot. I really can't. But it's, because it's God, okay? And it's like, there's one of my favorite YouTube videos is, how financial responsibility, and it's like, save money. Don't spend more than you have. It's a comedy. And
you sent it to me. It's a Saturday Night Live.
Oh my gosh!
Live
Google it. It's hysterical. And it's like Steve Martin. He said, "But where do you get this saved money?" And he goes, "It's in my book. It's only one page long." And it's like these are baby steps. Baby steps. There are big. You try to fill a jar with. You got a bunch of rocks and you got to fill a jar. You can either start with the small things, and then the small pebbles. And then you're going to run out of space. You can't fill the big pebbles in. So it sounds like I'm going to say the exact opposite, but I'm not. If you got a jar and you need to fill it with all these rocks, you do need to focus on the big rocks first, because the small rocks will fill themselves in the space that's left. Yeah. But as there's a mystery here, because again, I can't explain this, just focus on the step in front of you. You got to think about the goal, but that's not your target. And that's why it's like so counterintuitive. It's very difficult. I can't unpack it, but I know it works, and it's not my idea. It's God. He says, "Seek ye first the kingdom, and I'll give everything else to you."
Yes.
And it's like, okay, so God, that means I'm going to win the lottery. That means I'm going to have a Testarossa or whatever.
Testarossa. He just went old school on it.
Yeah.
You just went Miami Vice on us.
Members only jacket.
Yes.
You
just went to history right there.
Yeah. So there you go. But it's like if you do focus on the day to day, the little things that are important, the big things have a tendency to work out.
So talk to us too, because we have a little thing that we based our whole men's group on. Well, there's two things, but I mean, one of the foundational things was probably it wasn't the thing that I focused on, and it wasn't the thing that I thought that I was going to bring to the table. I was like, I remember I got donuts. No one ate them the first time. I was like, man, we got coffee. We got all this stuff. No one cared about any of that. There was one little thing that I didn't even think about. That really has shifted, and we've started to talk about it, and it's something that as we move forward, I think that it's gonna evolve marriages, it's gonna change business, and it's honestly, guys, when you hear this is so simple, but Craig, help me with it.
Oh yeah, first of all, the reason nobody ate the donuts is because most of us ourselves excluded in our small group. They're like Olympic athletes. Their arms are bigger than my waist. You know?
Like Dan?
Oh my gosh.
I don't think Dan has ever had a donut.
I don't
Dan,
think, no.
If you're listening, Dan, you need to have a donut,
No,
brother.
no. I think they have had donuts, but somehow, I mean, these guys, and that's just
Protein donuts. They're eating protein.
Well, it's just fast backwards there. It's, they're fit because they practice fitness in their life. It's not like they join a gym and I'm going to be fit for a month. No, these guys live a lifestyle.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's not
you do too, man.
I got good genes.
There we go.
So Kelly, you got us started on this thing called love letters. I'm going to challenge you to daily write a letter to your wife and build her up. Be positive.
Tell me the first, like when I
Oh,
first said this, like Craig is military. Craig is like, and so tell me the response, right? The knee-jerk response.
My knee-jerk response was, first of all, I can't write it because nobody can read my writing. I'll never do it. My wife will never read it. So I got to use my iPad. And second of all, so I sit down right after the small group. I'm going to write my first love letter. I'm going to do it. I'm going to tell my wife how important she is, how much I love her. And then literally I'm like, there needs to be an app for this. and so I'm like, let's find an app. There's got to be an app. And I can't find one. And I download all these apps while I'm sitting in Kelly's in his salon. And there's not an app. And I'm like, Kelly, we need to build an app. So that was what I thought.
So tell us the concept of the love letters and why it's been so profound.
Well,
and tell us about some of the effects that it's had on you and your marriage.
Well, there does not go a day go by. Let's try that again. There's not a day that goes by that I can't find somebody to criticize my wife about, or you or anybody else, okay? I can be a very negative person. Anybody can. I mean, you can find fault with anybody at any time because nothing's perfect, right? Well, I choose every time I write a love letter not to focus on that, but to focus on ways to build my relationship, okay? Complaining doesn't build my relationship. You think it's this person's going to go, thank you very much for opening my eyes to your wisdom. No, they're going to, you complain about something, they're just going to shut down, okay? So when I write a love letter to my wife, and it's not a I love you, it's a loving attitude toward her expressed in words, and it takes different forms. And I'll tell you, Kelly called me on this. I start programmatically going, I've got to say this, and this in every love letter. And he's like, no, maybe one day just tell her how attractive you think she is. Oh, that's cool. Or, tell her about a challenge that you helped her that she helped you overcome, And so it takes a different flavor because every day is different, right? Well, the love letter helps me focus on the positive in her, okay? God is responsible for changing her and sanctifying her and making her into a better human being. That's not my job. I can't do it. I shouldn't do it. Okay, but the love letter is powerful because it reoriented my heart, and it blesses her. Obviously, you get a love letter. I mean, how many when you're going to school, how many Valentines do you get in your Valentine's, sock in elementary school? You want them. You get a note from a girl that says, "I like you." It's awesome. Makes you feel great. Well, same reaction. The person on the receiving end, they're going to be blessed by it. Okay, but it blesses the giver, just like charity. Okay. God doesn't need our money. God doesn't need our talents. He wants us to use them, okay? So that's what this is. That's what this is all about. He doesn't need me to make my wife a better person, but he wants me to be charitable. And that's with my money, it's with my time, and in this case, it's with my words. So it's really transformed. And again, I thought I'm going to write one every day. Well, then what do? Maybe I'm good if I write 2 a week, So it's a challenge to get a habit formed. But it's funny enough, some of my love letters, been days I was not a happy camper. In other words, I was like, here's my list of everything you've done wrong in the past 2 days. And I'm like, wait a minute, shut up, Craig. Stop thinking about. Okay, there's a verse. Take captive all of your thoughts to God. Okay. And I don't remember the verse, but it's so important. And it's like, I'm going to have the mental discipline to stop and start saying something positive.
That's amazing. And what I found for all of you listening out there, if you've been with me at an event, sometimes I'll speak about it. But this is where it started. So I reached in my bag, and they were little ones. One is for my daughter and one is for my wife. And some of you out there are like, well, you got a son too. And I'm just about to start one for my son. And it started with my daughter because I wanted her, she was going through times as far as like, being in 6th grade, and she went through the pandemic and, all those things. And I wanted her to know that how much value she had from me as far as her dad. And so I started to write these letters, and what I would do is I'd write, a letter every day. And then at the end of the week on Friday, I'd give her the notebook. She would read it, or sometimes she wouldn't. And then she'd give it back to me, and I'd write 7 more. And what I find in this, and what Craig was saying is, and what we want you to get from this is it's not so much about the person who you deliver the note to. It's about you. And it's amazing because your heart starts to change. Am I correct, Craig?
Absolutely.
Like you start to now, and this was the thing with my daughter. I said to her one day on the way home, I said, "I'm proud of you, baby." And she turned to me and she said, "Why?" And I was stumped. And she's like, "You say that every day, Dad. Are you just saying it because you want to say it, or do you really mean it?" And I'm like, you should listen to your dad and not talk back to me. That's what you should do. You're obviously, you haven't read the verse, don't spare the rod and spoil the child, because I'm about to break out the rod on you. But what happened was I had to get specific. And this is how we, for those of you who knew our business early on, or, in years past, we built our business on being specific, giving specific compliments, because generalized compliments don't mean anything to your wife, don't mean anything to your kids, and don't mean anything to the people around you. But once you start getting specific, then you have to look for those great things, because I know in the morning I have to write this letter, and it has to be specific, because if not, my wife's gangster. She's gonna call me on it. She's gonna
see right through.
She's gonna be like, "What?" So let's so make sure when you are writing, make sure it's who you are, right, in your language. And Craig and I talked about this. Yep. And that it's very, very, very specific. And it could be 2 lines. "Hey, thank you for, drying the dishes yesterday when I washed them." I could tell you this will transform your marriage. I promise you. Craig, let's move right into this, because we were talking about specificity. I don't know.
Specificity?
I don't know.
Specification?
Maybe we can look that up
Specificity.
later.
Let's say
specificity. We're going to talk about specificity. Yep. We're talking about being specific. Because I remember this. Remember when we started in our group and we started getting specific on prayer. How has that affected you in your life?
Well, back to the specific again, I want to say something. It's like you've got to be authentic and say real things, like you said, because it's like, it's not.
Tell them about the system. Tell them about the system,
I will, but
too.
It's just not charitable to call a fat person thin. It's dishonest. It's not. But like I remember, I have a relative who began to lose a lot of weight through a lot of hard work and determination, and she's a young girl. And everyone was like, "Oh, you look so good. Oh, you look so great." And I wrote on Facebook, I said, "I'm proud of you for doing something that most people can't do. Good for you. I don't care how you look." And she she said, "That was the best thing anybody's ever said to me." And why? It was honest. It's what I thought. So anyway, back to your question.
Yeah.
Specifics. You want to talk about love letters?
I mean, talk about specifics, talk about those kind of things. And like I said, I want you to know we're working, Craig and I are working on the app right now. So it's called Love Letters. And this thing is going to transfer into not only your wife, but your kids. And then guess what's going to happen? Imagine all you bosses out there who could write a love letter, not a, "Hey, goo goo gaga," but a love letter to your team. And that they knew how much you appreciate them. That's coming.
And it's not like a doorway to a 100,000 page blog. It's not designed for that. It's designed for small relationships. And it's like, bosses, forget that. Employees. "Boss, I'm going to start writing you a love letter. Here's how I want you to start reading it.
How awesome are you, or what you did?"
Or this is the organization. Build the organization up. And you know what? If they subscribe or they agree to read it, well, you can say what you want, because they said they were going to look. It was their choice.
Wow. I mean, it's transformative.
Like,
But I will also want to encourage you, like with this right here, you guys can see it there in the light there. We had the journals, and these are honestly, and I'll show you my handwriting because it's really, really bad. This
not as bad
here,
as mine.
let's see if I can get it in the light. I don't even know if
it's not as bad as my handwriting.
You can see the chicken scratch, kind of.
Wait, show it to me. Yeah, that's chicken scratch.
That's
but it's
chicken
so
scratch.
much. You should be a doctor.
So, like you guys can see it as I fold it. Let's see.
There it is.
There we
There it
go.
is.
So you can see it and make sure that it's signature to who you are. And they can be, little notebooks. But I tell you, this little notebook transformed my relationship with my daughter, transformed my relationship with my wife. It could transform so many things. So let's get into the specific side, not only in the love letters, but let's talk about prayer specifically and how that started to transform. Because you remember when we first started our group and we were talking about praying specific, it was hard at first. And then we were like, no, we want, like, what do you want? Like, what do you want? Pray for that thing specifically. Talk to us about that.
Normal when you say, give me a prayer, pray for my family. I'm like, what? My neighbor's friend is like, wait, what? Or how about this? Make me a more kind person. It's like, yes, God can do all of those things and God can see everything at once all the time. But I think and he doesn't need us to ask in order to answer. And God does stuff we never even ask for. Someone said to me the other day, you don't know how many times God has saved your life. I'm like, yeah, that's really profound. If you're going to get to heaven, he's going to let you see that. And you're going to go, you were like there every second doing stuff that I didn't even know about. And I hope I get that perspective. I don't, but being specific, remember, I was talking about, I want my son to hit a baseball. He's first season in baseball, and this is a great example because it didn't come true. Whole season went by. He's a great runner, and he knows how to judge a ball versus a good shot. And I'm not a sports person, so I got a seat on the 50-yard line for the baseball. I'm good. But literally, my prayer to these guys is, and I would do it every game. I'd send out a message. He's up to bat. Pray that he hits. I just want him to hit and feel what that's like. And guess what? It never happened. I'm still blessed. But I was specific. And then slowly it transformed into just like, I want my son to, a lot of other things. But that was the specificity. I mean, Kelly prayed for, this is my best one, he wants spokes or wants wheels on his car. I'm like, that's so selfish. I'm like, well, no. It's like, imagine a way that God's going to answer that prayer or inform Kelly's thoughts about that, because God will respond when you ask. And again, it might not be the way you expect, but it's definitely, there's going to be a response.
So Craig, tell us with the history side of it, I want to shift gears back into it, is tell us about something that if people knew the history of it, they wouldn't revere the thing the way that they do in today's society.
Oh, that's a good one because, and again, all of the thoughts that I immediately think are all very political in nature. Okay.
Well, I have one. I have one quickly. Give me one. Just an example, right? So a Christmas tree, okay? Yeah. A Christmas tree was a pagan god.
Yeah.
And it was worshiping that pagan god. Now, today, my kids are not worshiping a pagan god. They love a Christmas tree. It smells good, and we decorate it. But to know the history of it, I don't know. If I was locked in and I was teaching my kids the history of it and I was locked into that, I don't know that I'd have a Christmas tree in my house.
Yeah, well, here's one for you. How many of you guys have a Volkswagen?
I loved them.
Well, it's German for Volkswagen, which is the people's car, okay? Guess who invented the Volkswagen? The Nazis. People don't know that, but it's true, okay? In the 30s, they decided that they were going to put a car in every family, and they were going to build, by the way, the Nazis built, and my wife jokes, everything I talk about has a tie back to the Nazis. But yes, remember I told you earlier, it's one of the reasons I find the period so interesting. They invented, and you can look this up, they invented a car that was designed to be owned by, back then, think about it, you had to be rich to own a car, okay? The Germans, the Nazis thought that they were going to change that, and they built massive expressway systems, the Autobahn, so they were preparing for every person to have a Volkswagen. And they actually had ability for workers to make a monthly payment in a payment book toward their Volkswagen, which as soon as the war was over, they'd get. Ask me how many were delivered, 0, okay? They had the 1,000-year Reich, which lasted 12 years, okay? Thank God they failed, but the Volkswagen persisted and was eventually picked up in the 50s and was sold as a commercial vehicle. So you think back about that, and it looked very similar to the Volkswagen Bug that they started making. So there's a little history behind a Volkswagen for you.
So when you
didn't know that, did you?
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
But when you start focusing on your joy, you start focusing on your purpose, which you talked about earlier. You focus on your purpose, you focus on your joy, then the profit comes. But talk to us about when the profit comes, though, because this is where a lot of people go off the rails. How have you been able to stay on the rails, even though the success worldly has been able to come?
You know, God does not deliver when you say profit, and it's not money profit all the time. It's, you know, there's all sorts of ways that we call them blessings, okay? You know, it's just as easy to be disconnected from God during blessings. In fact, I find the hard parts in life are when you're like, you know, oh my God, be with me. You know, it's when you're successful, you tend to take it as a compliment to your own strength, which it's really not. I mean, God gives us talents, and yes, we have the ability to work. And it's very, it's a little bit, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Oh, you know, everything's God's talent. And it's like, you know, but to a degree, it's true. So, but back to what you asked. God delivers blessings in his timing. And the reason he does that is because a lot of times, you know, give me $1 billion when I'm not ready for it. Watch how quickly my life just devolves, okay? And so, you know, you say, what happens when the blessing comes? My hope is that if you are focusing on the right things, when the blessing comes, you'll know what to do with them. Wow. And it won't affect you. You know, let me tell you a story. When I was a second lieutenant, when I was a first lieutenant in the Marine Corps, you know, I lived out in town, and I used one of the Marine Corps laundry. I used a dryer in the barracks because I actually didn't have one at home. I couldn't afford one. And I went home that night, and I put a sign on the washer. It said, "Do not use," because I left my laundry in there. Well, I came back. One of my sergeants was literally livid. And he's going to kind of talk to you. And I took me, he literally ripped me a new one. He's like, "You don't understand. None of the Marines could use that machine because you put that sign on there, and they're not going to take the sign off." And, you know, I was like really hard for me to get to. I mean, it just rubbed me the wrong way, and it was all I could do to accept the critique, because he was 100% right, but I couldn't receive it. Okay, and so I wasn't ready to receive that, but now it's like, you know, it's so profound. It makes me sort of stop. You are given wisdoms. You're given money. You're given success at a time you can take it, you know. And I wish, you know, again, I talk about wise head on young shoulders. Very difficult to find. And again, I'm walking around this a little bit because I really got caught up in that story about my sergeant named Gonzalez. I'll never forget it. So it sort of took me away from the point. I was going to make something really profound. I was going to say something really cool and like a perfect response. But just think about that moment. I was a dummy.
Help us with this, Craig, because
I had something really profound to say.
Well, everything that you said was profound, man. Everything in the last hour.
I'll think of it when I'm going home today.
Everybody has the nuggets that they're taking away from Craig, which I think is incredible, man. And so, talk to us. I want to go into the subject about marriage, because I think a lot of times when a person, you know, and when I say success, I always make sure that people understand what I mean by success. And my brother was very big on me with this. And success had nothing to do with the money. It had nothing to do with things. It had all to do with doing exactly what you were purposed to do, like your unique design, right? And that's why, Craig, I think you're successful. It's not because of you being on TV or you doing all the things. It's because Craig is powerful because he knows who brings his power. He's vulnerable because he knows that someone else is more powerful than him, which is the God that he serves. When we're in these kind of realms, right, I think that marriage throws a wrench in all of our systematic and all of our success-driven and all of our accomplishments. Marriage puts us in a place where it really exposes us, and we really, truly have to be present.
It's the hardest thing you'll ever do.
It really is.
I mean, really, I've done a lot of hard things. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do because it really exposes you and makes you vulnerable in ways that no human being, as much as you say you want it, we don't.
So how is it, I mean, talk to us too about, because I think a lot of guys, you know, go into it and they're like, oh, well, you know, if my woman would just change this, and that, then everything would be cool. But I find that what God is doing is not transforming our wives for us. He's transforming us.
Yeah, a couple of things.
Yeah.
I tell my wife regularly that she's the perfect person for me. And she's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, and she knows that. But what I mean by that is she's exactly the person that I need to be transformed. And I think God uses the peculiar and God-invented institution of marriage as a tool, as a foundational tool. It's the workroom for life. It's like what my wife calls it. It's the sanctification gym. It's where you go to be sanctified. And if you connect to that and you accept it, it's like, okay, how many of you go to the gym and you complain when the weights are too heavy? You don't. You go there to lift heavy weights, okay? But when you're in a marriage and the weights get heavy, what do? You complain, you get upset, your pride comes in, your selfishness comes in, instead of going, these are heavy weights and they're going to make me stronger. And it's not making me stronger for me. It's making me stronger to be a better human being so that I can have more impact in life. And, I want to stop and say, this is like tough to talk about, but I was married twice. This is my second and last marriage, and I failed as a husband. It's the single biggest mistake I ever made in my life. And now I'm not saying it because I'm not happy, but I was divorced after almost 20 years, and I was because I gave up, because I didn't lean in to the difficulty and the hardness. And I'm not saying hardness is like, oh, it's just off. There's joy to be found in marriage beyond measure and comprehension. Don't get me wrong, okay? But it's on the other side. It's not on the other side. It's daily. You find daily joy. So I'm correcting myself a little bit. So as I stand here or sit here and talk about marriage, you have to understand my credentials are a failed marriage and now what I call a hard marriage. It's a blessing to me to be married to my wife, and I derive great joy from her, and the only person who gets in the way of that is me.
And I think it's great. This is what I was talking about earlier, and you display it, man. I mean, you have the strength and the knowledge and wisdom, and then you have the vulnerability, man. And I think that that's what makes you a real human being. I think that's what attracts people to you. I think that it's, it's so admirable. And it's funny that you say what you said. I'm not laughing at you, not going through the because I was married before too,
yep.
and I failed in that marriage. I failed really bad. But it's one of those things where that's what I complimented you today before any of the listeners, any of you out there listening, before any of you heard any of this. This is what we were talking about in private. So talk to us too about. Let's talk about men and some of the things. Give us a couple actionable items that some men can do that would be really transformative for them. And I would say, and I want to start the first one off, like get in a men's group. Like
Absolutely.
Get in a men's group. This, and you might argue with this with me, Craig, but any men's group, just to start off, because a lot of people are like, I'm looking for the perfect one, and how's it go? No, just get into one.
Yeah, there's a saying, the perfect is the enemy of the good. If you search for perfection, you'll miss a lot of good. So he's right. Get into a men's group.
And then transform
hopefully it's not like a satanic men's group, but like at the basic level, you're gonna get there. Totally agree with you.
So talk to us about some actionable items that men can do, because for me, I always want to be a better father. I want to be a better friend. I want to be a better brother. I want to be a better husband, right? And so I want to grow in those areas. And what I've been finding is with all of you that I get a chance to spend time with, like this morning, to be able to have Chandler there, have Brian there, have you there. I mean, it lifts me. I got energy, right? It's just like power, But what are some of the things that men out there can do right now, today, that can start to transform them in those areas?
Yeah, okay. So number one, you might not be able to get started on the love letters, and you don't need an app. You don't need a fancy journal. They're great. If you just started by making a commitment to compliment your wife every day about something authentic, just once, you will be surprised at the transformation that will bring. Just once. That's easy. I'm not going to, and I didn't know you were going to ask me this, but as I listen to you talk about love letters, just try it. Or if you got a tough relationship with your boss or your son or your daughter or whatever, your dad or your mom, compliment them once and be authentic about it. And you can even tell them that you're doing, or don't. So that's the first thing. If I can think of like one other thing, be accountable for your actions. And that's like the first one was do it. It's really easy. Did I do this today? Did I not do this? Yeah, there you go. That's God calling me that I should.
I know. I even have it on Do Not Disturb.
Well, you owe me a case of beer.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what happens.
Exactly. I'm going to do it on sleep too, and Do Not Disturb.
Yeah, I like
and
turn
driving.
mine off. I think that's a specific one, and I'd love to give you another specific one. But right now, something I'm struggling with, and that I can tell you is so important: take accountability for your actions. When you're wrong, don't make excuses, and tell the person I was wrong. As you know, don't say, well, okay. There's a big difference, by the way, between an explanation and an excuse. Okay, I believe that explanations are important and useful because they help you figure out what went wrong and how to do things right again. But the time to give an explanation is not when you are not giving an excuse, okay? You don't replace one with the other because guess what? They sound exactly the same.
Exactly the same.
Exactly the same.
And timing on that, Craig, is massive.
Absolutely, timing. It's like why didn't you close the? I don't know. Why did you take the trash out? I don't know because I was tired. Well, that might be a good explanation.
Sounds like an excuse.
Sounds like an excuse, yeah. And there's lots of mitigating circumstances in life. It's like, why weren't you on your game today? Well, I didn't go to sleep until 2 a.m. I just lost my job. Their explanation, just don't give them. Take accountability, or when you're rude to someone. I was rude to you. Yes, I believe objectively what you did to me was wrong. And it might be. What they did to you, they might have spoken to you harshly because they are impatient. And guess what? It's usually not about you. It's about them. And this is something, again, I struggle with it, but take accountability. If you're sorry, if you've done something wrong, just apologize. Take responsibility for your actions in your daily life because you will also, just like the love note to your wife, you'll be surprised by the transformation in your relationships.
Well, I always give my pops wisdom, and my pops was.
I wish I knew him.
Yeah, he was amazing. Well, he still is, but he would say, boy, I don't need any of your excuses. And he said, every time that you say, you say something and then you say, but I want you to imagine a big booty right in your face. Yeah, okay. And I was like, Dad, that is so grave. Like, why are you trying to tell me that a booty's in my face? He said, every time you say, but, son, it's the exact, like when someone's saying, why'd you do this? Well, I did this, but, and he's like, booty in the face. So now I have this visual from thanks Pops, that every time that I add a but to it, then there's booty. You know what I'm saying?
I like that. And
it stopped things because I find that it really takes the validation away from the apology. Like if you apologize and then you say but, and then you tell them what they did wrong, it takes away the apology in the first place. Or when you were saying, like, if your wife says, why didn't you take out the trash? As opposed to you just saying, I apologize, I'll make it better next time. That you say, well, I did because of X, because of X, because of X. You just wipe away that whole thing, and they're just going to hear the excuses. So, yeah. Craig, you're a genius.
Yeah, I'm not. In the Marine Corps, they used to say excuses are like, they smell and everybody's got one, And so I heard that same thing. Your dad said it a little nicer.
Yeah.
But I didn't until just this very moment learn, because I just said it, and it's like, that's really wise. That excuses and exclamation. I've always believed excuses and explanations are different, but I never really got it until just the second. Don't just give an explanation because it's better. Just don't give one. I mean, I just thought about it. It's the same thing to the other person. Just apologize.
Well, and I think that transforms into, and for all of you out there in business too, if you're wanting to grow, another position, you're wanting to, get promoted, whatever it is, literally listen to Craig and stop the excuses, stop the explanations, just make it better. Because the person that, say you're a boss, or if you are the boss, you don't care about why it happened. You care that it will be better in the future. And that, I tell you, will help you in leaps and bounds. And I dealt with so many young kids, and they would sit and want to tell me for 20, 30 minutes why they did what they did. Not to say that I don't care who they are, what's going through their life. I'm just saying, as long as you're committed to making it better in any organization that's worth its salt, if you're committed to making it better, that's where the magic will happen.
And one other thing too, it's like in that light, this is me talking business now. Mm-hmm. If you give credit and take responsibility, if you just, whenever there's something good, give credit to someone else, even if you did the whole thing, right? Give credit, but take accountability and responsibility. If you do that, and I didn't say that. That was, I think it was either Eisenhower. It's one of the big World War II greats, and I don't remember who it is.
Well, because you don't remember, you can just put my name at the
That's
end
right.
of it.
Kelly
So,
Cardenas said this, and I remember it, so I'm saying it back.
It's a quote now. We're just going to quote it. We'll put it out on the website.
But no, if you give credit and take responsibility and accountability, so when things go wrong in your organization, it's your fault, no matter what.
I think it's amazing.
Take it. Just take it. And you know what? I've had people take responsibility for stuff that I know I did. You know what I do afterward? I'm like, I love you. Thank you for doing that. Well,
Craig, I think it's amazing, and not only I wanted to have you on the show for so long that you kept denying me. That's why I had to trick you today.
You literally tricked me, and I'm so happy you did.
I tricked you today, but it was because he's exactly in line. All you listeners out there, everyone who's been riding with us, all the OGs and the people who just are listening to this for the first time, you realize that why I want to bring Craig on is because of his attitude. Like, you see it. I mean, his attitude, whether you're just listening or if you're watching it on Spotify or on YouTube, if you're watching it, you can see him, and you can see this light, and you can see this energy, and you can see this attitude that he's bringing into stuff. Not that he's the perfect guy. He already said that, but just the fact that he's fallen in love with his circumstances right now, and you just watch magic happen around him. So I started the podcast because of people like you, iconic people like you, Craig, that I wanted to take, and I wanted to show my kids, Maddox and McKenna, who's 10 and 13 years old. I wanted to show them that anything in the world is possible. Anything. As long as you had the right attitude and the right work ethic. And so what advice would you have for Maddox and McKenna? And if you could use both of their names, it would be awesome.
Okay, gosh, Matthew and McKenna.
Maddox.
Maddox.
Not Matthew.
Matthew and
Come on.
Patricia?
Matthew and Patricia. Yeah. Hey, Maddox and McKenna. Uncle Craig. I don't even know of Uncle Craig. Hey, and for all of you out there listening, I used the reference. Like, Craig came to the men's group, and I was like, Craig.
Oh, my gosh.
And he didn't know what I was talking about. And I was saying, I put up a Friday reference, which everyone out there listening, you should watch Friday. If you haven't watched it, you're not American. But I used that, and he was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, Craig, you got fired on your day off, Craig? I mean, I even got a Debo's bike rental shirt, which Craig doesn't even know what it is about.
Everybody knows what coffee is.
Yes. Okay, Craig.
Okay.
Craig.
Okay.
Maddox, not Matthew and Patricia.
Maddox
with a D.
Maddox
and McKenna.
Maddox and McKenna.
Let's try it a couple times. Maddox.
McKenna. Maddox and McKenna. Okay. That's English for Maddox and McKenna. So, okay, this is on a personal level. Hang out with your dad as much as you can. I mean, I know, really hang out with your dad as much as you can. And that's something I say about myself too. I mean, you know what? That's just turned into something I'm going to say to every kid out there. Hang out with your dad and your mom. But there's something special about dads. It's not just because I'm a dad. But I know if I was Maddox and McKenna, I would want to hang out with Kelly. I tell Kelly that all the time. I want to hang out with you more. And it comes back to the other thing. Baby steps in life. Take responsibility and accountability for your actions. Those are my, just as much as they would apply to a CEO, they apply to Maddox and McKenna and Reese, my son.
Yes. So, Craig, as we finish up today, why is it so important that you keep pouring out blessings onto people?
Well, it's part of God's plan. I mean, God tells us to do that, and it's not because he needs us. It's because he wants us to be part of doing that. And it's transformative. They talk about being a giver, and when you give, you stop holding on and you open your hand. It's that posture. It's part of the posture of growth, and it's part of being transformed. And if you don't have that posture of giving, whether it's time, we all have something to give. Time, money, words, gifts. Give somebody a ride in your car. Say something nice to the barista who nobody notices. Those little things. It begins to posture your heart to do what? To love God first so you can love others best. And I did not make that up. I didn't make it up. Our Pastor Jason said that, and he says it all the time at our church. And I've heard it before. You learn to love God and fall in love with God first, you will love others best. And that charity, that opening, that giving, it's part of that. It's part of the equation.
Craig, you're incredible, man. I mean, it's been beyond my expectation today.
Fun.
And I love it, the fact that I surprised you, because for those of you out there watching, and he had no idea, I said, sit down in the chair. We popped on, and he was telling me right before, he's like, I would love to be on your podcast whenever. And he said that to me, but we've never got a chance. I was like, I'm forcing you today.
Can I like give you a 5, or is that like appropriate, or is that not? Like, what if I did that? Is that like breaking the third wall, or am I like in another state? I don't know. What would happen if I just did it? Like this, reached over, like,
Look at this. This is camera tricks. That's camera tricks right there. I love it. I absolutely love it. So for those of you out there listening, I want to thank you again. Everyone out there listening, everyone out there watching, you guys have put us in the top 1% globally, and that's because of you. It's not because of me. It's not because of my cool guests. It's because of you, every single one of you out there, and every listen that you have, every download. And what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to share this with any man, any father, any wife, any kid that would get some value from Mr. Craig. And he acts like, he's just Craig, but I mean, he's a celebrity all over the world, but I love it because he's a person. And it doesn't matter about what he does. It matters about who he is. So now's the time. You need to check out the sponsors, click the links, do all the things that you know that you need to do. Craig, I want to thank you again, my man, for being on the show. We're going to have you more and more. The next time, we're going to have some real artifacts in here. We'll have some real guns. We're going to show that. And I just want to thank you again, man. You're officially off the hot seat.